Hello, APG community listener. This is fellow listener Stuart Aslett calling from London Heathrow Airport. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have your seatbacks and tray tables in the upright position, your armrests down, and your seatbelts fastened? Oh, and as I'm calling you from the UK, I must also insist that your window blinds are open for takeoff. Now, to hand you over to two fine gentlemen for their view from the other side of the cockpit door, it's Captain Jeff Nielsen and your first officer guest, Miami Rick.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 169.
Flight 209, you are clear for takeoff.
Roger.
LA departure 123.9.
Roger.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from my side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 302 in the Hyatt Place Hotel in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at FAA controller hiring practices. Also, the FAA is looking into psychological testing after the Germanwings crash, maybe. The Solar Impulse faces moment of truth. That and much more, including your great feedback. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 169 is ready for pushback. Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Airline Pilot Guy. And again, Captain Jeff here, a captain for a major U.S. legacy carrier, and we also have my first officer today, Miami Rick. Hello, sir.
How you doing, Skipper?
Oh, just fine. Wait a minute, are we on a ship all of a sudden? I feel like Captain Stubing. Actually, I kind of look like Captain Stubing, except for I have more hair.
I was going to say that. You kind of look like him.
No, I have he didn't have a mustache, or he was bald and he didn't have a mustache. So I guess I look nothing like Captain Stubing. Oh well. The Love Boat. So Rick, where are you?
I am in Amsterdam. Actually got in yesterday afternoon, and it's funny because when I got to the hotel, they gave me my room key, and my room number is 420, which is quite appropriate for this town.
Yes.
So I'm here in Amsterdam today, and then tomorrow, late afternoon, early evening, flying over to Frankfurt for a quick layover there, and then over to Brazil the day after tomorrow.
Wait a minute. So you're going all the way from Amsterdam to Frankfurt?
Yeah, I'm kind of worried about that one. I don't know if the plane's going to have the be able to do that, long trip.
Can you do that on a 777?
I guess we'll find out tomorrow. if I'm on next week, then it went okay.
I kind of felt bad, having you on, and you're in the midst of a layover, and then I learned that you're just flying from, from Amsterdam to Frankfurt. So I don't feel so bad now. I don't care if you get any sleep or not.
I was trying to make you feel bad. It didn't work.
I know. And so here I am. I'm like literally what? How many miles from where you live normally? I'm in Fort Lauderdale. Maybe
Fort Lauderdale to Miami, you'd be, what's that, like 30, 40 miles, if that?
Yeah, probably less than that. So, and so I come down here, and what does Rick do? He leaves. He leaves town.
I fly away as fast as I can to the other side of the world.
All the people that I love, they do that to me. Anyway, so but I'm glad that we were able to hook up for this, so to speak, this session, this episode of the Airline Pilot Guy, and great to have you back on. Last time I did my show, which was an excellent show because I was solo, which was the way I used to do the show, and still do occasionally, but it's always a lot of fun to have somebody to kind of, what do you call it? Bat things off of, or kind of. What's the right term? Little
powwow, convo, how you want to call it?
Yeah, I enjoy having a co-host. It's always a lot of fun. And I invited Dr. Steph to join us as well, and she just got back from Iceland, and she's going to tell us all about that trip, I'm sure, on a future episode, but she said, today is my first day of work and I'm just swamped with paperwork and everything else, so she wasn't able to join us today, but maybe in a future episode. So, Hey, I'm enjoying a lovely beer here.
What do you got?
Oh, man, it's good. It is, well, I couldn't bring my Acme beer glass with me, but I did take with me, if you're watching the video, you'll see this beer bottle, and it says Acme California IPA. Now, I'm from California. I'm not an IPA, but I do love IPAs, and saw this at my local bottle store yesterday, so I picked up a 6-pack and threw 1 or 2 in my bag to take with me so I could have some refreshment while I was recording the show. So it's actually a pretty good beer. Pretty good beer.
That's awesome. So basically the show is sponsored by the beer-making division of your global empire.
Yes. Last week I was eating at one of my properties, the Acme Oyster House in New Orleans, and today I'm drinking one of the other products of my vast empire, my Acme empire. So anyway, speaking of mugs and pint glasses, by the way, if you want one, I'm going to get it to you, and you're going to love it. But I have to tell you that everybody that has asked for one, of all of you, none of you have yet received them because I have yet to ship them, because I have to tell you, I am flat swamped with work. I'm coordinating a convention, a conference, and it was so much more work than I thought it was going to be, and I almost had to drop the trip that I'm on right now because this thing is in just under 2 weeks away, and I am so far behind and so much stuff to do, and I just haven't been able to get to fulfilling those orders and sending out invoices to those of you who are interested in getting a coffee mug or a beer glass. But I promise you that once this convention is over and the dust settles, then I'll be able to concentrate on that. So please bear with me on that. And nobody has paid me yet for it except you, Ray Williams in Alpharetta. He sent me a check, and but I haven't deposited the check yet, so I don't feel so bad. So anyway, I promise you that we'll get those things out in the mail and shipped to all of you who requested them as soon as I can, and then as soon as we run out, then I'll just order some more. We'll make more. So
awesome. That's going to happen.
And I was talking to Rick before we hit the record button. Rick and I are planning to go up to IAD for the Innovations in Flight thing they have on Saturday, June 20th, the day before Father's Day. And I'm hoping to get a couple shirts printed with the Acme logo on it that Jim Mercado designed for us. And as soon as we have the ability to print those things out, I'll be doing that in my print shop, and we'll offer that for a donation as well. So stay tuned for that.
Beautiful.
And by the way, if you're interested, if you haven't already done so, if you're interested in the beer glass or the coffee mug, basically in the United States, around $20 for the drinking product and the shipping costs. If you're international, it's probably going to be something around $30, unless you're in some very remote part of the world where it costs even more. But I'll communicate that with you before I charge you. So Rick said he was just going to drop them out of his airplane when he was flying over Europe. But
I did say that, and Captain Jeff said, "Well, that's thank you for offering, but they probably would break by the time they get to the ground, and that would defeat the purpose."
Yeah, I'm just I'm just saying I think that would happen. It would be not a good idea, but I do appreciate the offer.
Well, I'm here to help.
I know you are. It was you have your heart in the right place. So. Anyway, so I talked about this on the last show and still planning on doing some kind of a meetup in Orlando on the 16th or 17th of June. Not sure which one of those days. Neville from the UK is going to be in Orlando, and we're going to plan on meeting up with him and any of you who happen to be in the area. Again, I'll let you know. when that time approaches. And then also in Miami, and this time I'm going to get Daniel Matiz. I actually wrote it down this time, is the guy that we're going to meet up with in Miami. And Miami Rick is going to be there, and I hope Nick and all the others down here in the Miami area will be able to meet up as well on June 23rd. So
that's going to be fun.
Keep that on your calendars. Speaking of meetups, you had a meetup with somebody just recently.
Yes, I did. I think it qualifies as the first ever international APG meetup here in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. And a couple hours ago, I met up with Masha, a very lovely young lady who is a member of the APG community. Great fun to be around. We totally geeked out, talked airplanes and sim procedures and crosswind landings and all that stuff. And I actually brought along the microphone and the sound recorder, and took a little audio for you guys to join in on the meetup. So this is what we got. Hey, APGers, it's Miami Rick, and no, I'm not in Miami today. I happen to be in Amsterdam, and I am with the one person whose name we couldn't pronounce. So, yeah. So how do you pronounce your name again?
Masha.
That's her. It's Masha. So we're hanging out in Amsterdam. It's a beautiful day outside. We're sitting outside this little pub here. We're about to have a beer, and as you guys know, it's more than 24 hours till my next flight, so I'm good to go. So, yeah, Masha, why don't you tell us what you do, how'd you start, how'd you learn about the APG podcast, how long you've been listening, who you are, all that stuff.
Well, hello, APG. This is Masha, hanging out in Amsterdam with Miami Rick. I'm a postal worker here in Amsterdam, and I always loved aviation, love aviation podcasts, love all podcasts, and aviation podcasts are the best. And the Airline Pilot Guy show is the best of them all.
Yep, that is true. So, Masha, what was it? A couple of weeks ago, you were just hanging out at the airport, and I happened to fly overhead you. How did that happen? What were you doing?
Well, I like to go to the airport to snap pictures of the pretty planes and shoot some videos. And well, I follow you on Twitter, so I knew you were coming. So I have my flight aware, and I was tracking you, and I knew exactly where to be.
That is awesome. Oh man. So yeah, we're gonna have our beer now, and there's a cute looking Dalmatian dog walking by. Hey, Dalmatian. That's cute dog. And yeah, so stand by for APG 169. We're going to start working on that later today. It is 1:15 p.m. here in Amsterdam. We're going to start recording at about 8 p.m., so that's 2 o'clock Eastern time. Looking forward to that. Anything else you want to say before we go?
Just a big shout out to the international APG community.
Awesome. Alrighty, guys. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you on the APG show tonight. See ya. Bye.
All right. And the crowd goes wild. Very nice.
Goes ballistic.
Very nice. So it sounds like she's saying Marsha. So,
yeah.
But there's no R in it.
Like she specifically said it's Mascha. Like she spelled it out. I'm like,
well, we got the spelling of it. That's we just have trouble pronouncing it, like words like this.
Potable.
Or
potable.
Yes.
Or potable.
Hey, it's enough. If you do that one more time, that's it. You're out of here.
I do it one more time and then I'll do it again.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, that's cool. So thank you, Masha, for meeting up. I know it was kind of a pain. Oh, by the way, is that your first stalker? Do you have many? Just kidding. She was watching via Flight Aware, so that's why I said stalker. I'm just kidding, Masha. You're not a stalker. We don't think you are, but it's very cool. By the way, if you watch that video, I mentioned it on the last or a couple episodes ago, where she took that video of you landing your 777, and I'm thinking, I don't think that was Rick. It had to have been the captain, because it was such a nice landing.
Hey man, that's how I roll. You don't hate the player, hate the game.
Okay, let's move on with something important. The coffee fund. Yay!
Wait, I think I heard you guys.
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks.
All right. Stop applauding. Okay, there we go. All right, the Coffee Fund. If you're interested in supporting the show, because it's not free. Well, it's free for you watching the video or listening to the audio podcast, but it does have costs associated. We moved the giant airline pilot guy server to a different server that is more robust, and thanks to my good friend and APG community member Arash. And so that costs a certain amount of money every month, and then we have not web hosting, media hosting. The audio file that you're listening to right now has to be hosted by a company, and that's Libsyn, Liberated Syndication. That costs me a monthly fee. The audio editing software I use, that's another thing that I pay every month, and equipment, etc. It's just it's not, what I'm trying to say is it's not free. And of course, more importantly than all of that other stuff is the fact that I need caffeine to stay awake because I'm old. And I just really rely on caffeine, so that's why it's the Coffee Fund. And so if you have the resources to contribute to the fund, then head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. Information there on how you may do that if you would like. By the way, this is the Java Jive by the Ink Spots, recorded in 1940. So, since the last show, we have a couple contributors to the fund. The Coffee Fund Classic Method. We have Steve Trumbull and Michelson Diamonds Global. So thank you, both of you, for your continued contributions to the Coffee Fund. And if you're interested in doing that, again, if you have the financial resources to do so, head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. And it's always appreciated. And let's move on now for the news. Speaking of Masha, she sent me an email and she said, so you said you were going to talk about this news item, the NTSB air traffic controllers and software complicit in wrong runway landings, but she said, did I miss something? Or did you forget to talk about it? Okay, I'm busted. I forgot to talk about it. So I'm going to talk about it on this show. And the NTSB says air traffic controllers handling a Southwest Airlines Boeing 737-700 and an Atlas Air Boeing 747-400 LCF, that's the Dream Lifter, that big bloated-looking 747 that carries pieces of the Dream liner, that both of those flights landed at the wrong airports in January 2014 and November 2013, respectively, did not follow standard procedures in alerting the pilots of other airports in close proximity to the intended destination airport, and more needs to be done to prevent issues in the future. Now, let's be very, very clear here. The ultimate responsibility for landing at the right airport is the pilot. So I'm not blaming, or the NTSB is not blaming air traffic control or software to blame these incidents on whatever. What am I trying to say, Rick?
I think you're trying to say that, at the end of the day, the people that are responsible, for the airplane making it to the final destination is the flight crew. And, I understand how on both these instances, the flight crew were performing visual approaches, right?
Yep.
But we as pilots need to corroborate what we see out the window with what our instruments are indicating. So, it's ATC might have they definitely have a role to play in us getting to our destination. But at the end of the day, who's responsible for the airplane making it safe and sound to the ground where we need to be, and that's us.
That's right. Well, in both of these cases, the controllers issued landing clearances, and they did not alert the crews of nearby airports that may have caused confusion. And the NTSB also adds that although the pilot should have more closely monitored their flight paths, as Rick just said, had controllers withheld landing clearances until the aircraft had passed the misidentified airports, the wrong airport landings may have been avoided. So basically what they're saying is that there are some changes that they're recommending for the software that alerts controllers to airplanes that are below the altitude that they should be, to kind of modify that so that it kind of filters out other airports that are in close proximity, and also that they withhold, or they're recommending that ATC withhold landing clearances in those cases where there are airports that are close by to the intended airport of landing, and not issue a landing clearance until they're past those other airports. And then that might prevent these kind of incidents in the future. And I agree, that's a good idea. I hope that the FAA will listen to the NTSB. And the way the NTSB and the FAA works in our country is that the NTSB can't make a regulation. They can recommend that something be done, but the FAA is the one that is actually the regulatory body. And the FAA could look at the NTSB and say, well, go pound sand. We're not going to do that. But I'm hoping that the FAA will listen to the NTSB and implement these procedures.
It's interesting. It's interesting because, and just to touch on this, one last point. It's interesting because I remember on the ILS to the old 9 right runway over at Miami International, and now it's 9, 8 right, 8 left, and there's a runway 1230. All the airports in South Florida have the same basic orientation. And there's Miami with parallel runways and one northwest to southeast runway, and then there's an airport just north of that called Opa-locka, which is another airport that has a pretty long runway on the north side, and it has the same kind of setup as Miami, and then Fort Lauderdale's further up, where Captain Jeff landed this afternoon. And on the old 9 right ILS plate for Miami, there used to be a note that said that you had to be careful because there's this other airport just north of Miami that has the exact same configuration and looks just like it, and to be careful that you don't land there, but in Miami. And they took that out, and I think probably should have kept that on there. I don't know. But,
yeah,
you really have to be careful where you land, because at the end of the day, you are responsible of the airplane making it down to the ground where you need to be.
That's right. That's right. And I do apologize for Rick is Skyping out a little bit, and it's probably not his bandwidth. It's probably mine here at the Fort Lauderdale Hyatt Place Hotel. Although I am using my iPhone for the hotspot, and it should have good enough bandwidth, but for some reason, occasionally your just that last little bit was kind of Skyping. So I hope that'll. No, it's not your fault. It's probably this end of the conversation, but we're doing everything we can to provide you nice, rich, clear communication from Miami Rick all the way in Amsterdam. When you think about it, it's pretty amazing that we're able to do what we're doing right now for basically nothing. Doing it
is amazing. We're thousands of miles away, and we're recording a show live, and you guys are going to listen to it in a couple of days, and it's going to be like we were sitting in the room with you. So it's never ceases to amaze me.
I remember the old days when I was in the Air Force, before personal computers, probably before you were born. No, maybe not that long ago.
Yeah,
we used to have
back when wheels were square.
Yeah, exactly. We had this thing called the Watts line, and it was like you call somebody, and if you were going to do it, it was like a big deal because it cost a lot of money. But if you used the Watts line, I don't know what that stands for, but you'd call like home or across the oceans or whatever, and you'd say something, and then you'd have to wait for like 3 or 4 seconds before they actually heard what you said, and then they'd send it back to you. And so half the conversation was each of you talking over each other. It was just a big mess. It wasn't duplex. It was awful. And now, we have instantaneous communications going on here. It's almost like he is just in the other like the one room over from where I am right now. So it's pretty amazing.
That's actually where I am. I'm not really in Amsterdam.
Oh, wait a minute. Come on. Rick,
I'm just kidding.
come over. Yeah. There he is. I hear the door. Let me go get the door. Okay, let's move on.
Right,
Trouble in the Skies. Fox Business's Trouble in the Skies. It was a 6-month investigation of the FAA's new hiring practices, uncovered changes that may put the nation's flying public at risk, as well as allegations that the newest air traffic control recruits had access to answers on a key test that helped them gain jobs with the FAA. So we're not going to go through and read every word of this article, but basically this segment, this what would you call this, investigatory piece, looked into this new way that the FAA has implemented to screen new recruits to be air traffic controllers. Now, it used to be they had a system where you'd go to a school. I think they called them, what do they call it, CTI? What does that stand for? Certified Training. All I see is CTI here. There's somewhere in here it says what that means. But they had like special courses and approved colleges that had 2-year and 4-year colleges that had these programs that you could enroll in, and it would teach you all you needed to know about air traffic control, and then you'd take this test. It was kind of like like the lawyers take an LSAT, and the medical school students take an MSAT, and they called this thing the something SAT.
Collegiate Training Initiative.
Oh, Collegiate Training Initiative. Thank you. Anyway, so they had this whole system in place where people would, they think, I'm going to be an air traffic controller, and so they'd find a school that had one of these CTI programs, and either a 2-year or a 4-year program, and then they'd take this test, and then you'd be ranked based on your test score, whether or not you were qualified or highly qualified, etc. And then I think it was like the end, like December of 2013, the FAA decided to throw all that out the window, and they started using something called the Biographical Questionnaire, or BQ. And the FAA says it created the BQ to promote diversity among its workforce. And it's like a really strange test that doesn't seem to have anything to do with air traffic controlling. And in this article that we're reading from right now, we have some people of diverse backgrounds, like a Native American and a female African American, who were really, really looking forward to a career in air traffic control with the FAA, and they both kind of fell in this hole where this BQ, this biographical questionnaire, was implemented, and they both failed it. And they're like saying, what is going on here? And Congress is starting to look at this as well, saying to the FAA, why did you do this? And what did you use for your criteria for implementing this new way of screening people for hiring and everything else? And there have been some studies that find that the new way of screening people for hiring as air traffic controllers is not as effective as the old way and everything else. So, and the thing that really kind of irked me was in this this whole piece that there was an organization that was actually telling people, hey, if you're going to, before you take this, biographical questionnaire thing, you need to contact us, and we're going to tell you exactly how to answer each of the questions. Now, I don't know about you, Rick, but that sounds like cheating to me.
That is the definition of cheating, and then imagine the kind of people that are getting to be controllers. I don't feel safe that way. Do you?
No, I don't. But you have to you have to realize that that's just kind of part of the screening, and they still have to go through the training and everything else. And so I'm confident that the people that actually have made it through the entire course of training with the air traffic control school with the FAA are qualified people. But I was just talking to Rick before the broadcast here, and I've noticed in the past few years that it seems to me that the quality, the caliber of the new air traffic controllers is not quite at the same level that I was used to in years before, and it's kind of concerning me a little bit that whatever they're doing and whatever they're using for screening and everything else is not exactly working out very well. So, but we'll have a link to the article in the show notes if you want to read the whole thing. But I don't know. I just thought it was worth talking about in this episode.
Absolutely. Interesting stuff because in the end, I mean, really, these are the guys that we count on to get us safely across our airspace system, and so they need to be on the ball. They need to know what's going on.
Right, and even if you think that don't worry about it, the computers are in control anyway, and they're going to prevent anything bad from happening. Nope. You have to have competent people working in those positions and looking at those radars and providing the separation, everything. There's a lot of human involvement still in this job, in this field.
I've heard it being an ATC controller as being referred to as playing a game of chess in 3 dimensions, and that makes total sense. Just imagine, just try to wrap your mind around that for a second. That's it's huge, and it's an amazing responsibility. So
I think there was an episode of Big Bang Theory that had some kind of a 3-dimensional chess set that Sheldon was inventing. But that has nothing to do with air traffic control or the Airline Pilot Guy show. So let's move on with the U.S. government is taking steps that may change the way airlines screen employees for mental illness in response to the downing of a plane by a suicidal pilot in France 2 months ago, that Germanwings crash. So basically what I'm saying is it might be the end for me and my career if they have to institute new psychological testing, because as all of you know, my wife constantly tells me a mind is a terrible thing to lose.
But you had a good run, so I think
I have. I've had a good career. The FAA has created a panel of government and industry officials to recommend ways to improve the evaluation of pilots' fitness to fly, said the person who wasn't authorized to speak about the project. It is one of the most comprehensive reassessments ever of pilot medical rules, the person said. Now, who is this person?
Well, the person that wasn't authorized to speak about
it. That person. Yeah.
That person.
Well, according to American Airlines Group Chief Executive Officer Doug Parker, it's going to go study it the way it should with the right people involved. That's an interesting sentence. That can't be right. Could he have said that exactly that way? I don't think so.
No, I think it was the person.
Yeah, the person may have said that. Anyway, who are these people? We don't know, but we just thought we'd mention that. Looks like they are considering some kind of psychological. Now, we've talked about this before. Rick, every year he does his annual medical testing, which includes psychological testing, right?
That is correct. And this year, as every other year, everything was fine upstairs. So I'm happy to report that we're good to go.
That's what she said.
Okay. All right. The Solar Impulse. That is that completely solar-powered electric airplane with 4 electric engines and making a around-the-world flight using just power from the sun. It made its way almost around the world, and right now they're in China, and they are about to undertake the greatest challenge yet to fly nonstop from Nanjing in China to Hawaii in the Central Pacific. For a passenger airliner, the 8,000 kilometers could be completed in 10 hours or so, but for this solar-powered, prop-driven experimental aircraft, it could take 5 to 6 days and nights of continuous flight. And right now, I just quickly looked at the website to see if they have embarked on this leg of the trip, and it looks like because of weather, forecast they have not. So they are still waiting for the ideal weather conditions to make or undertake this leg of their trip around the world. And the interesting thing here, Rick, is that the pilot is going to, I mean, he's solo, and he's going to have to stay pretty much awake that entire 5 to 6 days of continuous flight. And I think he said that he is planning to take cat naps of 20 minutes or so, and that he'll be practicing yoga to try to keep his body fresh. Maybe that's the way I can keep my body fresh, if I practice yoga.
Wow.
Anyway, if you want to learn more about the Solar Impulse project, we'll have a link to that in the show notes, and you can follow.
I should do that.
Oh, you're Skyping out again. Darn it. Say it again. Oh, no, Rick, are you still there? Oh. Please tell me you're still... Oh, okay, I can hear you now. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I lost you there for a second, but
okay.
I think I think it's a problem with on my end over here. I don't know what the heck's going on.
Oh, I don't know. Sometimes they have something called packet sniffing, and if you're using the internet for this kind of thing, it decides after a certain amount of time, well, that's enough. You should stop talking, and I'm going to end the call for you. But who knows? This technology, it's wonderful and frustrating at the same time. But sounds like you're back, so that's good. We'll continue. Anything else you want to say about Solar Impulse or anything else? Good. He's not saying a thing, so that means it's time for our feedback.
Captain, incoming message.
Well, Rick has finally just completely dropped off the line. So I'm going to keep going here with our first piece of feedback.
There we go.
Hey, he's back. Yes. I was just telling them, we just played the feedback bumper, and I said, you know what? I think he's gone completely now. But you're back, so welcome back, sir. And I was going to start with this from, let's see, Stephanie. Dr. Steph sent this in about 2 weeks ago. 12 things a pilot would never say. And the first one is they have a picture of a cockpit, and they have this old gray-haired pilot like me sitting in the left seat. And in the right seat is a very young first officer, and there's an arrow pointing to this guy. And this is what you would never hear a pilot say. Do you want to be the pilot one day? You still there, Rick? No, he's not. Okay, we'll keep on going. Let's see. The second thing that you would never hear a pilot say is, oh, that jet is so small. And it's a picture of an RJ, a regional jet, Canadian, what do they call it? Canadair regional jet from Lufthansa, Star Alliance. Looks like a CRJ 700 series or 900 series. It's not a small airplane at all. And you would never hear one of us saying, that jet is so small. Okay, and we're going to be talking about some of these 12 things you would never hear a pilot say as we move on with the show. And while I try to reconnect Rick again.
There we go.
Hey, he's back again.
I'm back again.
I don't know. It probably, who knows whether it's your end or my end, but whatever. Moving on with the feedback, AirStig of Canberra, Australia says, please talk about these topics. I don't know what AirStig is. AIRSTIG of Canberra. Canberra?
Canberra?
Canberra? He says, hello, Jeff. This is Australia calling. It's a reference to a Eurovision song contest. Okay. I'm up to my second dual navigation exercise for my private pilot license. It will be through some of the most heavy aviation traffic areas in Australia. Specifically, Canberra, Camden, Bankstown, and then Hornsby, north of Sydney, and back to Canberra, via Victor 1, which is under the approach from the waterside of Kingsford Smith Airport in Sydney.
Cool.
People do this every day as a training exercise, so if I can do it without major errors, I should be well on my way to a successful private pilot check ride. The catch is, it needs to be done without anything more sophisticated than an E6B, a paper map, clock, compass, and radio. My questions are, at 100 knots cruise, would you fly VFR into somewhere towered like Palo Alto or Orlando Executive at the busiest time of the day today without an EFB, autopilot, flight director, or co-pilot and not give it a second thought? Or would you rather someone else did it the first couple of times to be sure you didn't miss something and just help out by looking for traffic, then brush up on your map reading skills? So, what do you think, Rick?
So at 100 knots cruise, would you fly VFR? Yeah. I mean, actually, that's kind of how, I can't believe I'm saying this, that's kind of how we used to did it when I went to flight school.
Yeah.
We had nothing, but an E6B, paper map, clock, compass, and radio. That was it. So, yeah, just make sure you establish two-way communications or two-way comms with the tower there, and that should be on your VFR sectional. And they should be able to keep you clear of any conflicting traffic. And if it's too busy for them to take you, they'll just let you know what, we're too busy right now, go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just give it a try, and they'll let you know whether they can take you or not.
I know it sounds intimidating, but sometimes the best thing for us is to throw ourselves into a situation that we're not entirely comfortable with. And we learn the most from those situations.
Absolutely.
And he says, on the subject of cockpit automation, please also introduce the ideas of pilot-induced oscillation, Mach tuck, the Coffin corner, and why it's not the speed of the aircraft that makes the automation useful or necessary, rather how close to the edge of the envelope the operator wants to make, or wants to be that makes it useful. Well, that's true. It depends on the kind of airplane you fly, but, I look at automation as most useful as doing those things that are just kind of, what's the word? Boring.
Right. Tedious, I
Tedious.
guess.
That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. That's why I have Miami Rick here to provide me with my vocabulary. Tedium, that's, cruising at 36,000 feet, like we were coming down from New York today, out over the water. You don't want to be at the controls, hand flying the airplane and trying to track that magenta line. You want the auto flight system to do it because it's just tedious. Not that we can't do it. It's just that, why do it when you can have something else help you with it?
Yeah, but then there's that, and there's also the fact that nowadays, and just about everywhere in the world, we fly in airspace. Airspace is called RVSM airspace, so reduced vertical separation minimum airspace, which means that there's only 1,000 feet separation between airplanes going one way and airplanes going another way. So you really, it's actually required that you have an autopilot, functioning autopilot, when you're flying between flight level 290, which is the low end of the RVSM scale, to flight level 410, which is the high end. So in that bracket, you need to have an autopilot to be able to fly there.
Yeah,
so,
that's true. Did I tell you about one time we had trouble connecting our autopilot, and I went, well, what the heck, we'll just hand fly it, and then I forgot about that part where we're not supposed to be up in RVSM. We were like 30, 31, 33, whatever, and we're cruising along. We did the whole flight, no problem. And then afterwards, I thought, I don't think we were supposed to do that. Of course, I fly with Acme Airlines, don't forget. And we have a special clearance to do that.
Yeah, and you were on your way to your Acme brewery, check up on them.
Yes, and the
who's by the way sponsoring this episode.
That's right. Thank you very much. So he said also talked about pilot-induced oscillation. That's definitely a factor. Mach tuck. When you get up toward the higher end or the higher range of the Mach operating or the operating envelope, you can experience Mach tuck. I don't know it's kind of like hard to really explain in detail how that works and what that is, but basically when you're approaching the speed of sound, or the wing is approaching the speed of sound, and the separate, I don't know, how would you describe Mach tech?
Well, Mach tug. So basically, all right. So as the plane flies faster and faster and faster, then the air that goes over the top of the wing needs to fly, and it needs to flow faster than the air that goes underneath, right? So that means that even though the airplane might be going, let's say Mach 0.8 or Mach 0.85, or for just as an example, the air that's flowing over the top of the wing might reach Mach 1, locally. So what does that do to the wing? So basically, any air that's behind that shock wave is going to separate from the wing, and you're going to have turbulent air behind that. And then that air is going to hit your horizontal stabilizer, which means that you're going to lose some pitch control. Now, as the shock wave keeps moving back and back and back and back, the center of lift of the wing goes forward, which causes a nose-down moment. But the problem with that is that since you're going fast and faster and faster and faster, that shock wave keeps moving and moving and moving. The nose keeps going further down and further down, and because you don't have you have that turbulent air hitting the horizontal stabilizer, you don't have control or much control of your pitch, and that's what causes that tail to come up, and that's really that can be a killer, because it can get to the point where you lose complete control of your pitch command, and then the plane just noses over and just goes faster and faster and faster until possibly you could get structural failure. That's how I would kind of put Mach tug. I don't know if that makes any sense. Yeah, there you go. But it didn't.
No, that's good. I mean, wow. We did not plan on talking about Mach tug, and that was literally off the top of Rick's head.
I just pulled that out of my hat right now, and I think it made sense.
Oh yeah, I did. I pulled up the Wikipedia article. I'm thinking, wow, this the Rickopedia is better than the Wikipedia, because the Wikipedia is like really confusing, but the Rickopedia is there, man. Nice job. So if you want to know more about Mach tug, please enter www.rickopedia.com. So yeah, that's cool. Yeah, Mach tug and the shock wave and everything else, and yeah, you can get yourself into a bad situation. In other words, don't go too fast for the design of your wing, because you could get into a situation where you can't control the pitch anymore. The coffin corner, as you get higher, you have a couple different things. You have a high speed limit and a low speed limit. The coffin corner is when you get up so high that your operating envelope is like just a couple knots, wide, and if you go too fast, then you get into that Mach tug, which we just talked about. If you go a little bit too slow, then you get into that stall area, and the wing stops flying because of the stall. And most airplanes, it's a pretty, I don't know, it's a safe operating envelope. But the higher you go, the smaller that little envelope gets, and you could get yourself into the coffin corner, which is you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And coffins are the things that we bury people in. So one of the airplanes that I think of when I think of coffin corner is the U-2. I understand that airplane it's very, very critical that when it gets up to those really high altitudes, that it maintain very accurate speed, because that coffin corner is definitely something that those pilots are always looking at.
Absolutely.
So anyway, yeah, automation does help with that, by the way. Unless you're flying in a Mad Dog, and then sometimes the automation, you have to really, really watch it, because it's just like, hello, are you going to, do you see the barber pole coming up? That's the pointer on your airspeed indicator that's basically saying, don't go any faster than this, because that's not good. And sometimes the system on the airplane that I fly goes, huh? What barber point? And then all of a sudden you're getting all kinds of overspeed. You're going, come on.
The other day I thought of you. Actually, I flew from Buenos Aires to Montevideo. It's just it was a 28-minute flight, and I hand flew the entire thing. We got up to, like, the flight plan said 24,000 feet, but I told the other pilot, the captain I was flying with, to just request 20,000. So we went up to 20,000 feet, stayed up at 20,000 feet for, must have been 3, 4, maybe 5 minutes, and then we descended, and it was nice. A little hand flying is nice when when you're legal to do it. So that was fun.
Yeah, nice.
Thought of you the entire time. Yep.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was like, Captain Jeff would like a little hand flying. I was like, all right, let's do hand
That's
flying.
what she said.
All right. Isaac said, I'm adding to my feedback from APG 167. Okay. Hello, Captain Jeff. Isaac here. I would like to say that I'm 12. Oh, that's right. I remember Isaac sent us some feedback, and I was thinking, well, how old are you? And that on my flight from Las Vegas to LAS, that's Las Vegas, yeah, to Chicago O'Hare in the United A320, the pilot invited me into the cockpit and showed me how to use the CDU. Keep your show going. It's my favorite. Your listener, Isaac. Well, thanks, Isaac, for sending me in the feedback. And I'm glad, I'm proud, I'm happy that you're part of the Airline Pilot Guy community. Moving on. How are we doing with the time here? Oh, we're not even at an hour yet. That's good.
Oh, we're not? Really?
Yeah.
Wow. We're doing good.
How is that possible? Okay. Let's see. Micah, our main man in Maine, I had a meetup in Portland last month. And my co-pilot and I met up with Micah. And he picked us up at the hotel and drove us over to the really, really good seafood restaurant, which, what is it called again? Ken's Place or something like that. It was really awesome. Anyway, he sent in some audio feedback that he also sent to the Airplane Geeks podcast, and it's quite long. It's about 9 minutes. So he talks about news and the sport of speculation. So let's hear what Micah has to say.
News reporting and the sport of speculation, or the surge in sensational surrealism in 3, 2, 1.
Oh, that's
Eighth grade geography class was a revelation to me. A class...
You know what I should have done? So that's something for the professionals that he just put in the leader. I think he was involved with, or I don't know if he's still involved, but he was involved in public radio. And he had a show, in fact. And so he's a professional. Unlike me, just doing.
Clearly,
shut up. And so that was a leader, I guess they put on there to let the audio engineers, when something is about to start and what they're about to listen to, play.
Cool.
So anyway, so let's listen to Micah again here.
3,
2, 1. Take it away.
Eighth grade geography class was a revelation to me. A class that has influenced me to this day, but maybe not in the way one would think a geography class might. Sure, I loved learning how to read maps, what legends meant, the scale, how to measure and judge distances. I loved learning about rivers, mountain ranges, plateaus, climates, all things I still use on an almost daily basis. But what had the most impact on me was learning about news. News in the geography class? Yes, absolutely. Now, I still can't say exactly why it fit into 8th grade geography, but my teacher, Mr. Bowers, who was best known at school as the head football coach, required each and every one of his students to subscribe to the New York Times. It was delivered to our classroom and read with him every morning in class. Some of us kids, and even some of Mr. Bowers' fellow teachers, thought he was just lazy, trying to get himself through the day so he could get to football practice in the afternoon. But I never thought of him that way. I loved learning how to read the paper from him in class. Mr. Bowers taught me about news and how to understand it. He explained what it meant for a story to be above the fold, what the size of headlines meant, how stories are placed throughout the paper. I learned how to scan down the middle of a newspaper column and get the gist of an article, what to look for in the first few paragraphs, and the summary in the last few. This wasn't taught from the perspective of journalism. It was to teach us how to read a newspaper, how to question reporting, to understand what sources meant, and to scrutinize what was written. Now remember, this was in the days when the word vet meant someone who had been in the armed services, or a veterinarian. The draft was still in place. The voting age was 21, and the drinking age in many states was 18. Watergate was just a building in Washington, D.C. But I digress. Let me just say that I learned to love to read newspapers. My mother and father, both avid readers and Sunday newspaper junkies, encouraged me. I looked forward to Sunday afternoons. Together with my mom and dad, I would read the Sunday New York Times, the New York Daily News, and the Sunday Bergen Record. I would see what stories each paper was covering, and how the editorial perspectives might differ. It was wonderful. I wanted to read every paper I could. I would save my allowance and go down to the candy store almost every day after school and pick up a different newspaper. That's when I found the National Enquirer. Something was different about this paper. It was not like the others I'd read. The National Enquirer was amazing, like reading books of science fiction and horror. It said there were real UFOs flying around us, that vampires really existed, and people have been brought back from the dead. This was fantastic. I bought it every week and read it cover to cover. One afternoon, I had the National Enquirer spread out on the dining room table as usual, when my father happened to come home early and join me. "What are you reading?" he asked. Not that he didn't already know. So I showed him. "Oh, that's great," he said. "I hope you're enjoying it." I told him how much I liked it, and that I'd been reading it every week for the last 2 months. "I know," he said, "and that's fine. But you know the difference between what you're reading here and the New York Times, don't you?" I asked him what he meant, and he reminded me of the New York Times motto, "All the news that's fit to print." Then he went on to say that the rest of it, the news that's not fit to print, can often be found in the National Enquirer. Dad said that it was perfectly fine to read that other news, but to keep it in perspective. Now my dad, Lou, was a psychologist by trade, and one of the most brilliant men I've ever known. He turned this day into a great lesson for me. He taught me the principles of Occam's razor, how when dealing with competing hypotheses that predict equally well, why the one with the fewest assumptions is most likely to be correct. In other words, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, well, it's probably a duck. It was from my dad that I first learned the phrase, "When you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras." Lou taught me about sensationalism and muckraking, how it's human nature to hunger for rumors, and how rumors come about when there's a desire for more information, but when there's no further information to be had. Now sure, these may all be cliches, but these cliches are important. In fact, these are cliches that our current news media often forgets, and that thing referred to as social media almost never bears in mind. By the way, from my perspective, the term social media is a misnomer. It's neither social nor media. Now, some 50 years later, I still love the news, and I still read at least one newspaper every day. I love the radio too, something else I grew up with. When you combine the two, news and radio, well, now you really have something. Growing up, I always had 2 news radio stations coming to me in the New York metropolitan area. They're still there, WCBS and WINS, now both owned by the same corporation, but still 2 different stations, covering stories with differing content. I still remember the WINS motto by heart. "You give us 22 minutes, and we'll give you the world." They still do. It works great on radio, but not so well on TV. TV news isn't news. Well, not anymore anyway. It's become entertainment. I can tell you exactly when it changed to entertainment. Well, within 24 hours of that change. The date was April 14th, 1970, about a day after the oxygen tank explosion on Apollo 13. What happened? Well, all 3 TV networks were covering the potential disaster aboard Odyssey and Aquarius. After the first 24 hours, there was really little to report. It was a waiting game. With no new information, by definition, there's no news. The networks, not wanting to lose audience, were vamping until ready. As I recall, CBS and NBC were going over the science, but this was getting boring and repetitive. ABC, however, always in last place for news coverage, decided to go a different route and started to create its own news. Rather than reporting the boring science as the 2 other networks continued to do, ABC decided to track down and interview the parents of astronaut Jack Swigert. They asked Mr. and Mrs. Swigert how they were feeling with their son hurtling around the moon in a dead space capsule and maybe dying in space. ABC opened the seam of a television goldmine. Then it became man-on-the-street interviews. How was the world feeling? It was picked up by all 3 networks, and all of a sudden it wasn't news. It was features. It was filler. It was entertaining fluff. Sure, it can be appealing, and even maybe fulfill some human instincts, but it's not news. Early on, CNN learned that news coverage doesn't transfer well to TV. In 1980, when CNN first broadcast, they ran half-hour news blocks, repeated and updated as new information became available. But it's not interesting watching a talking head read the news. CNN learned this quickly. Features and human interest stories started to fill the space. Then came the most damaging, and maybe the most useless content, speculative news for the purpose of sensationalism. Some say that the primary reason why broadcast and now print news has changed to sensationalism is for advertising dollars. Sensationalism and speculation is entertaining. It increases viewership and readership, thereby increasing advertising revenue. Personally, I have a differing view on why the news has become sensationalism. Perhaps it's a bit more jaded. You see, true journalism requires long, hard research and education. Sensationalism only requires speculation, and that holds true for both producer and consumer of both content types. It's easier to create and consume sensationalism than journalism. Journalism is hard work. Not that those that produce sensationalism don't work hard, but it's easier to speculate about stories than it is to find hard facts. Finding facts takes time, and human nature is not very patient. As an airplane geek, it pains me to keep up with the news of a plane crash. It offends me to hear speculation about a pilot committing suicide by airplane, or maybe stealing a 777 full of passengers to secretly land it on an island a la MH370. I find it even more offensive to hear about missiles in the TWA-800 crash years after the scientific investigation was fully concluded. Whenever this kind of news story breaks, I think back on that conversation with my dad, and I think about the principles of Occam's razor. I keep my ear tuned to the news, looking for horses, not thinking of zebras. More importantly, however, when any big news story breaks, regardless of whether it's an airplane crash, a mass shooting, a building explosion, or any other breathtaking, spectacular story, I try to tune out the commercial spew of information until such time as there's real news from unbiased, vetted, and investigative sources. This is critical, and something we should all really try to do. It's even more important that government officials, especially those holding elected office, pay attention to facts only, and not create policies prior to a complete scientific investigation. We don't need another TSA, the Three Stooges administration, and the security theater that comes along with it. Keep the news filled with facts based on research and good reporting from multiple vetted sources. Let it be boring, and allow it to take the time it needs. Leave sensationalism, muckraking, speculation, and rumors to the worlds of entertainment and fiction. For the Airplane Geeks in Portland, this is your main man, Micah.
Thank you, Micah, for that report. As you said, he prepared this for the Airplane Geeks podcast. He's been a contributor to their show for many, many years, and it's a wonderful podcast. If you haven't already subscribed, you should by heading over to airplanegeeks.com. And again, thank you, Micah, for taking us over to that great seafood restaurant. It was a great meal. Of course, as I always say, the conversation was much better than the meal itself, and a great piece and a great reflection upon the way news reporting has changed and journalism has changed over the past couple of decades.
That's true. He seems like a great guy. I hope I can meet you, Micah, at some point. That'd be great. And you know what? His voice and the cadence and just the way he sounds, he could be a reader for Audible. You know?
Yeah, he should. He should be. He's a wonderful, great voice and great diction and a great reader. Anyway, so I'm glad I had the opportunity to play that piece from Micah, our main man. Juan, Ruiz. What a stupid name, Ruiz. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that your last name too?
Yeah, that's my last name too, but
is this your brother? Is this your brother?
I don't know. We might be related.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's see.
I'm a brand new listener and member of the APG community. I first want to congratulate you for this amazing podcast and to sincerely thank you and Rick for all the passion and time you guys take in your busy schedules to bring us excellent content and quality of answers to our questions. Well, you're welcome. I've been studying the FCTM, the Flight Crew Training Manual, and FCOMs. What's the FCOM? What does that stand for?
Flight Crew Operations Manual.
There you go. For the 777-200 since January. It's a lot of reading. And finally, we'll start flying the plane in my PC simulator, Flight Simulator X, FSX from Microsoft, in a couple of weeks. For now, I just have a quick question for Rick. I currently live in Basel, Switzerland, and I've seen the 777 of your airline land here. Will you be flying to Basel? If so, I would love to buy you a coffee if you have a layover here in Basel.
That would be awesome. Actually, we do fly to Basel, and we do lay over there, but I haven't been lucky enough to stay there yet. I've gone through there, but I haven't gotten a layover there as of yet. But the second I do, you will be the first to know.
All right.
We might be long-lost brothers.
It might be. And he sent this link to jetstreamtv.net. It's a KLM 777-200 Amsterdam to John F. Kennedy. And let's see here. Let me play a little bit of this. I've not done this. I should have screened this, but I haven't.
Dude, heard something crazy.
Oh, here's an advertisement.
Rumor, there is no evidence and all charges
Yay.
were dropped.
Yay.
No.
Blah, blah, blah,
I
blah,
heard
blah.
DirecTV charges.
Sorry.
There you go. You just skip it?
Yeah.
Nice.
Jetstream. KLM 777-200 AMS to JFK.
Good morning. My name is Henk de Vries, captain on today's flight KLM 641 from Amsterdam to New York John F. Kennedy. Today it's with the Boeing 777-200. On behalf of KLM, very welcome to join us on our flight. Okay, Knut, preparations for KLM 641 today. Let's start. I talked to the dispatcher already.
Knudsen, this is first officer. And anyways, if you want to watch this video of pre-flight and taxi part 1, and then there are other parts as well for the entire flight, and if you want to see what's involved with pre-flight planning and preparation and executing the flight itself, look for the link in the show notes. And thank you, Juan, for sending that. And do you have any encouragement for Juan as far as the FCTM and FCOMs for the 777?
Yeah, well, you're going to find that the 777 is such an easy airplane to fly. It's the systems are so simple. They're very straightforward. You know, not a lot of intricate information that you need to know. You know, basically, it's one of those where if the needle's in the red range, it's too hot. If it's in the yellow range, is caution. In the red and the green range, you're good to go. Kind of thing. So, and it's like that. Throughout the entire suite of systems that you have on board. Very stable, very easy to land. You enter ground effect at about 100 feet because the wingspan is so large, and it just basically settles itself down on the runway, as you all saw on that video that Masha took. Thank you very much. And you're going to love it. Great plane.
I mean, if Rick can fly it, anybody can. No, I'm just kidding. All right, Pasadena. Rick is probably, one of the top tier pilots out there. Maybe. Anyway. Pasadena Brian writes.
Thank you.
And you're welcome, I think. Right? Was that a compliment? I don't know. I don't think so. Pasadena Brian, who is a contributor to the Airline Pilot Guy show, and he's also an associate producer for the Airplane Geeks podcast, writes, "Hi, hope all is well. I am now returning to," and by the way, he sent this to me for quite a while ago. So he was returning to Los Angeles from a trip. It's nighttime, and I'm driving east on the 105 freeway. Looking ahead of me, I can probably see 15 planes or so lined up for landing. It looks like the line is stretched out beyond Ontario on this very clear evening. And this sight brings me to a question. How far from the airport do you turn on your landing lights? Also, why do you turn them on? Is it for other planes to see you? I can't imagine it's for you to see the air in front of you. You are too far away to light up the runway. So why do you turn them on so far from the airport? And then he says, maybe it's because you don't have time to turn them on as you get closer to the airport. You might need them to see the runway. Thank you so much for a great podcast. Fly safely, Pasadena Brian. Good question. Basically, and we'll let Rick add his 2 cents after I give you mine. What we want to do, especially when we're below 10,000 feet, the closer we get to the ground, the more traffic we have to think about, and so we want to be as safe as we can. And when you're below 10,000 feet, we use all of the lighting that is available to us to make ourselves seen by as many flights or other airplanes out there as possible. So that's the reason. It's not so much that we have to light up the air in front of us, or we have to have that on for seeing the runway, which is important as well. I mean, that's really the reason why we have landing lights. But when you get below 10,000 feet, you're slow enough that most of the landing light systems are safe to operate as far as restrictions on, like for my airplane, for instance, we have wing landing lights that actually rotate from the wingtips out, and the lights are kind of about like a 10 or 12 inch diameter that kind of swing down, and they become perpendicular with the wing, and they're on the wingtips, and they cause drag and vibration and everything else. So we don't want to have them on when we're going, really fast above 10,000 feet up at cruise altitude, because it would just be irritating, the vibration that they cause. But when we get below 10,000 feet, we're 250 knots or less, we can put those things out. They still cause a little bit of vibration, but they are, more importantly, out there to shine a light so that other people can see us. And so that's the reason why we have our landing lights on that far out. When you see all those airplanes lined up for miles and miles, that's why you're looking at their landing lights.
That is exactly right. And, well, I mean, yeah, my 2 cents were actually included in there as well. But I got something else for you here that's interesting, that goes with landing at airports when low visibility procedures are in effect, and basically when you're the airport's operating in either Category 2 or Category 3 minima. And this is when the visibility is reduced by fog and cloud and all that stuff. And it's interesting because during the approach below 10,000 feet, as Captain Jeff just said, you'll have the landing lights landing lights on to aid in visual recognition of other airplanes and traffic and all that stuff. But the interesting part is that once you get to a certain altitude, this is written in varies from airline to airline, but in my airline, by the time you get to 2,500 feet, you need to turn off your landing lights, especially at night, because when you're flying in that fog right before you get to the runway, you need to be able, if you're operating on Category 2 minima, which is basically you need to see the runway by 100 feet, and Category 3 by 50 feet. If you have your landing lights on, then it's going to be hard to see the approach lights, because with those landing lights on, flying in fog, you're actually harming yourself because you wouldn't be able to see them. So that's why you turn the landing lights off, so that when you get close to the runway, you can actually make out the approach light system and be able to land in that kind of operation, Category 2 or Category 3 minimum. So it's interesting. Sometimes you have them on when it's visual, and sometimes you have them off when you're operating in low visibility conditions. Yeah, just like when you're driving your car, you don't want to have your high beams on, because that just oh no, I think we lost Rick. Oop, no, I'm here. Sorry. Oh, I thought he fell off his chair. But I just bored myself to death there. Yeah, you don't want to have the high beams on, because that shifts the beam upwards, and then the reflection off all the the water molecules or whatever those things are. When you have fog, those little tiny droplets, it makes it even harder to see. So you never want to use your high beams when you're driving in fog. And as Rick just said, good point, when you're in a low visibility approach, turning off the lights may mean the difference between seeing what you need to see to continue to land or not, and having to go around and do a missed approach procedure. So very good point. And hey, I got a recording of a very professional PA, and this is an example of the way you should communicate to your passengers.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon from the flight deck. My name is Rick Ruiz. Up front with me today, Captain Ramiro Peñarera, on behalf of Juan, Ecuador, and along with Jenny Rodriguez, our in-flight service manager, and the rest of my crew. I'd like to welcome all of you on board flight 517, service to Key Joint Connections. I'd like to inform you that we were just about done up here at the flight deck with our final preparations. Anticipating our departure on schedule, flight time will be 3 hours and 50 minutes. Slightly longer than scheduled due to some stronger than forecast headwinds. Giggity. Once airborne, I'll share with you more information about our flight today. Till then, I'd like to invite you all to make yourselves at home, sit back, relax, enjoy the flight.
Awesome.
You are awesome. And I didn't mean to play the Java Jive. I was trying to move to a different tab on my...
But it was a good kind of tune in the back.
So, Rick,
there.
what were you doing there?
Man, you got to have fun with it. This was back in 2011, and we were flying down from Miami to Quito, and down in Ecuador, and I had the entire family on board, and it was two guys, obviously two guys. So the one captain had the trip up, and it was my turn to do the trip down. So I did the PA, and then my sister, she said, "You know what would be really fun?" I said, "What?" She said, "Well, it'd be really fun if you went on the PA and did the PA as Quagmire from Family Guy." And so I did, and everybody loved it. It was great. It was a fun time. And it was funny because we basically had. I was talking to Captain Jeff before we started recording, and I was telling him that we basically had the entire plane to ourselves. It was like our own little private jet. And it was a memorable flight. It was great. We had a great time, and the PA is how it all started. So.
Very nice. From Facebook, Tim Hitchcock writes, Hi there, Captain Jeff. Hope all is well with you, and thanks again for your amazing podcast. Just a couple of quick questions, if I could, please. I love your beer pint glass. How much would it cost for me to have one sent over to me here in Australia? I don't know, probably 200 Australian. No, I don't know how much. Well, I'll get to you on that, Tim. Also, on a more personal question, looking at doing a first-class medical exam for later down the line, but my question is, over the past 4 years, I have had kidney stones. One time, it was so bad it put me in the hospital for a couple days, although not had one for over 18 months now, fingers crossed. Just wondering if this could affect my chances of passing my medical exam. Take care, best wishes, safe flying as always. Cheers. Tim, from Down Under. Do you know anything about kidney stones?
What's that?
Do you know anything about? Do you?
Oh, do I know anything about? Oh,
anything
man,
about kidney
actually,
stones?
I do, and I've had them.
Ooh.
And I have a first-class physical, no problem. So at least in the States and in Chile and in Ecuador, where I have Class 1 medical certificates, it's apparently not a problem.
Good.
They are very, very painful, though. Very, very painful. I've had them once, and it happened right before I was scheduled to do a flight, actually an Atlantic crossing. And thankfully, the flight got delayed by 4 hours, I think it was, and I started passing this stone right before the flight. And had the flight not been delayed, it actually would have happened to me, mid-flight, and that would have been really bad. But yeah, they hurt. They hurt like heck.
But that shouldn't keep him from getting a first-class medical in the future.
No, not at all. Not at all. It shouldn't. Just the thing is, you got to make sure that, and ever since that happened to me, the doctor said, just make sure that you're always hydrated, because basically that's what's going on. And when that happens, you're not drinking enough water. At least that's what the doctor said. So I make it a point to drink plenty of water, so that any chemicals and any crystals or any of that stuff that happen to want to bond and bind together and make a stone, you don't give them a chance to do that if you keep hydrated and keep flushing that stuff out. So
I thought it was because you weren't drinking enough beer. Well, beer is not 90% water, I think, at least. Yeah,
beer is. Well, it depends on the brewer. I don't know how they do it over at Acme.
It's mostly testosterone, I think. Yeah. Anyway, luckily I've not experienced kidney stones. When I think of kidney stones, I think of Seinfeld, because most of my life I think of Seinfeld, the great comedy here in the U.S. That went for about 10 years, I think. There's an episode where Kramer has kidney stones, and they're at some kind of a circus or something like that, and he's in the bathroom. When he passes the stone, and he screams so loudly that the guy that's on the high wire falls off. Anyway,
I tell you, that is yeah, that's pretty accurate. It hurts like you have no idea.
Yeah, is it bad as childbirth, Rick? Oh, wait a minute.
No, I'll tell him in the next life when I come back as a woman.
All right, we have some audio feedback from Dispatcher Mike.
Hello, Captain Jeff and the airline pilot guy crew and community. It's Dispatcher Mike here calling to give some feedback for Justin about his feedback from the last episode. Justin, I think your plan of trying to become a dispatcher and get a dispatch certificate is a great idea. I like what Rick said about, don't ever give up on the chance of flying. There might be some new waiver or something that you could get in order to get to first class medical. So I would definitely try that route first. But if you want to go the dispatch route, I think you are a great candidate for it. First of all, you have a flying background. While having a flying background is not required to be a dispatcher, it's certainly going to help you through training. As a licensed pilot, you already know how to read a METAR. You already know how to read approach plates. You know how to read TAFs. You're a pilot, and being a dispatcher is being a pilot, but you don't go anywhere. So I think that's a really, really, really important piece of the puzzle that you already have. As far as your public safety background and management experience, that's also just another great thing on the resume. There are a few dispatchers at Acme that came straight from the military and retired as colonels in the military from the Air Force and jumped right in and became leaders at Acme in the dispatch department. So your expertise and your public safety background isn't going to hold you back. It's actually going to enhance your resume. Another thing is multitasking is very important from dispatch, and from that public safety background, as a fire chief, I'm sure you have to deal with more than one problem at a time, especially if you guys have a major fire. Organizing and a fire crew and how you're going to attack the same problem, you have to attack it on multiple levels. Dispatching is pretty much the same way. You don't just have one airplane in the air that you're in charge of. You sometimes have up to 30. I mentioned this on Twitter with Miami Rick a couple of weeks ago. Both him and I were working, flying all night long. He was flying from Amsterdam to Campinas in Brazil, and I was just sitting at my desk in my office. We both worked 12 hours. He flew 3,000 plus miles on his journey. I traveled 60. He managed one airplane. I managed 79. So it's the nature of the beast as a dispatcher. I think your plan's great. I think you should tackle it. The one thing that I would hold back on from your feedback and your comments is don't limit yourself to one airline. There are 3 major airlines left in the United States. Delta, which is based and has their dispatch office in Atlanta. United, which has their dispatch office in Chicago and Dallas, and American, which has their office in Dallas. So don't limit it. When you're a dispatcher, you have to be willing to move yourself and move your family in order to get the job that you want. So that's my only recommendation, is be willing to move. You can throw Southwest in there. They're also in Dallas. So that's what I got. Captain Jeff, great show as always. Have a good one.
Thank you, Dispatcher Mike, as always, for your feedback. And does he live next to Bhavesh in outside of?
Yeah, I was gonna make a comment regarding that very point there.
I was like hearing all that nature in the background there.
Yeah, I think he's got a window open. Either that or he's got one of those noise generators that we spoke of the other day.
I think actually he doesn't live in a house. He lives in a tent out in the jungle somewhere. Anyway, thank you, Dispatcher Mike. And we have some more feedback from Dispatcher Mike, and this one is specifically for Rick.
Hey, Captain Jeff and the Airline Pilot Guy crew. Just calling to leave some feedback and a question for Miami Rick. Rick, when I used to work for an airline that I'm going to call as Cardinal Direction Airline, we used to have 747-200 freighters, and I dispatched those a lot. And we had one flight in particular, which we all called the Walmart Express, which came out of Shanghai's Pudong and up to Anchorage. And man, we maxed that airplane out every single night and barely carried enough fuel to get all the way on some nights just to make it work and carry as much cargo as we could. So here's my question for you. In training in recurrent classes on that airplane, it was always joking that the second officer was the fire suppression system for the main cargo deck. Is that the same case on the 777? Obviously, you guys don't have a second officer, but does your main deck cargo area have a fire suppression system? And if it doesn't, here's another follow-up question is, on the 777 freighter like you have, do you guys still have a cockpit door? And do you fly with it closed? The question is coming from is basically the UPS accident and crash in Dubai where the crew was overcome by smoke from a fire from lithium-ion batteries that ignited in their main cabin cargo deck area. So just a few questions I was thought of. You know, if you had that door there, pressurization would help keep the smoke out. Just wondering if that's something that actually happens on the 777 or not. Freighters, haven't been on one. That's all I got. Thanks, guys.
Well,
all right. Thanks for that question. It's a really good question. And yeah, on the 777, we do not have a main deck fire suppression system. So how do we fight a fire if it was ever to happen? Well, what we do, and what's on the checklist, basically what we have to do is we have to descend down to 25,000 feet as quickly as possible, basically like a rapid decompression. So that's basically the maneuver that we fly. And then we depressurize the airplane. So, you know, you don your oxygen masks, you establish your communication, and then you basically arm the fire suppression system. Well, it's called that, you know, up in the overhead panel. And then when you press the button to actually actuate the system, all that you're doing is you're opening the outflow valves, letting all that air out, and the reason why you're staying at 25,000 feet is that you know, hopefully the partial pressure of oxygen is going to be low enough so that the fire can't progress and it will eventually die out. That is the reason why on the freighter version of the 777 we have an oxygen system that is going to be able to provide us with oxygen for, you know, 3+ hours, so that we are able to fly at 25,000 feet with our masks on and be able to divert to a suitable airfield after the emergency. As far as having a door and in the cockpit, no, we don't. We have a little curtain, and I'm not kidding. We do have a curtain that that separates what's called the supernumerary area, which is where the business class seats are, and then the bunk beds are, and the galley and the restroom and all that stuff. What separates that from the cockpit? But we do have what's called a rigid barrier, which is this, you know, as the name implies, a rigid barrier made out of titanium that separates the main cargo deck area from the supernumerary area, and as well as isolating the livable quarters for the airplane's livable quarters from the main deck. It also protects us from in case the cargo was ever to shift forward and hit that barrier. That barrier is rated to, I forget, I can't remember off the top of my head how many G's, but it's a ridiculous number. So that's supposed to keep us safe from the cargo crushing the supernumerary area and keep the fire in the main deck area if it was ever to happen. So that's basically how we deal with that. And if all that fails, you know, I'll go back there with a bucket of water and take care of it myself.
The water. That's interesting. I'm surprised kind of that they don't have some kind of a fire suppression system for the main deck.
No, and it's interesting because well, these lithium-ion batteries that Dispatcher Mike talked about, those are really dangerous stuff. I mean, and that type of that type of battery, particularly that specific type of battery, it's what's called a CAO, the cow cargo. Not cow moo, but cow CAO, and CAO stands for cargo aircraft only. So basically, that means that you can only ship those batteries on cargo airplanes. And then when we carry those batteries, we actually don't carry them in the main deck portion of the airplane because of that very reason. Because the top portion of the airplane, the main deck area, the empty tube where the passengers would go, it doesn't have a fire suppression system, but we depressurize the airplane, like I just said. So we carry those kinds of batteries on the belly of the airplane because the belly area, they do have a fire suppression system. So if they were ever to catch on fire, we were able to put that fire out. So on the main deck, we get cargo that is not, very, very flammable or very unstable or anything like that. So that if there is a fire, we are able to put the fire out just by depressurizing the airplane, as I described.
Interesting. Well, great answer and a great question from dispatcher Mike. So thank you, Mike, and look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Yeah,
and
thanks, Mike. That's a great question.
Let's see.
Oh,
Ron?
and thanks for tagging along on my flight the other day. That was great. Like you said, I was flew for 12 hours. He worked for 12 hours, and it's true. I mean, 79 airplanes versus one. Dispatching, man, that is mad props to you guys. Absolutely.
Yeah, they do a great job. All right, let's keep going with some more audio feedback. This time from Ryan.
Okay, Captain Jeff and Rick, if you're there, it's Ryan here from Australia. Just listening to episode 167 and heard the feedback about pilot-passenger communication. That reminded me of a bit of a story I have. Back in December of last year and January this year, I was lucky enough to be over in Europe, and I was flying from London Heathrow to Zurich. And after we boarded, the captain came onto the PA system and was apologising for the delay, which happened to be due to a refuelling issue on the A320 we were on. And he started talking about quite intricate details regarding the A320 fuel system. He explained that the problem was that the single pressure point refuelling wasn't working on this particular aircraft, so the fuel truck was having to fill up the left wing tank and then drive around to the other side of the aircraft, fill up the right wing tank. And he went on for about 2 or 3 minutes explaining the A320 fuel system, cross-feed valves, pickup pumps, etc. And I was completely geeking out in the back. I was loving it, but you could see on the looks on some people's faces, they were just like, oh my god, why is this guy talking about all this stuff? After the refueling was finally completed, we pushed back around 45 minutes late, and we headed out to the de-icing pads, where the pilot was explaining the different types of fluids, type 1 to remove the ice and snow, and then type 4 to increase the holdover time.
Are you sure that wasn't Miami Rick? No, okay.
And he was explaining all the different chemicals in it, and again, I was geeking out, I love that kind of stuff. But again, other people are like, oh, can this guy be quiet so I can read my book or whatever? And then when we got to Zurich, we were deboarding, and asked one of the flight attendants standing by the door if I could go and have a chat with the pilots. So they went in and asked, and said I could go through. So I went through and talked with the pilots about the flight and, what was the weather and the winds and all that stuff. And then I talked to them about their PA announcements and said they were good and I enjoyed them. And as a private pilot student and also a future engineer, that I was really into technical detail and I want to know what's going on. I think they were really appreciative and happy that someone with an interest in aviation came up and talked with them, and they got to share their part of the thing that we all love. So yeah, that was just my little story from my trip around Europe, and I hope you enjoyed. So keep your CDI centered and of course keep it green. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Keep it green, did he say?
Because we're going green, remember?
We're going green. We're going green. We're gonna take care of the earth.
We're going green. All right.
Ooh, yeah. I feel like I should have like an afro wig, rainbow colored.
That is so insensitive. I can't believe you said that. Okay, Ryan, thank you very much for your audio feedback. He said P.S. He didn't say P.S. He said P.S. Nice landing by Rick at Amsterdam AMS.
Yay!
Yeah,
Thank you, Mach.
Some more fans out there. Yeah, that was great. Great feedback. We were talking about pilot-passenger communications and how some people, it's really hard to please everyone. Like there are aviation geeks like Ryan that want to hear all that stuff, and there are others that are like, I don't care. Just don't tell me anything. Don't disturb me. I don't know.
Yeah, didn't we have some feedback on this? These two guys that were remember a couple episodes ago.
Yeah. The show where they were talking about the guy coming on and talking about all this detail, and even on that show, the one guy was saying I don't want to hear any of that, and the other guys go, well, I wouldn't mind hearing some of that. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, we love what we do, and you need to be an av geek to be, flying one of these things, and we just want to share our love for what we do, and that's really all it is.
Yeah, exactly. And I found in my experience that most of the time, most people do appreciate, going into a little bit of detail about what's going on, and even if it's something they don't want to hear, it just seems to work out better, at least in my experience.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. This is from Private Pilot Israel Mueller. And on May 30th, in 4 days, he said, a group of volunteers, pilots, and ground crew will be giving free airplane rides to pediatrics with chronic and critical illness from Vidant Children's Hospital in Greenville, North Carolina. This event is organized by Free to Be Me, a non-profit organization. Free to Be Me counts with the help of volunteer pilots, ground crew, and donations of any amount to allow these kids to have a day of fun with their entire family. Last year, Israel volunteered and spent the day with Noah until he got his airplane ride with his mom, and I look forward to volunteering again this year. If you can help, please do. Please visit Free to Be Me, their website, and or their Facebook page to learn more about the organization and the event. Donations can be done online following the link on their website. Riley's Army, Bo's Buddies, and Dream Factory are partners of this event. So he gave me some links to the website, Facebook, and YouTube promo video. And he said, thank you, and fly high and fly safe. Private Pilot Israel Mueller in Greenville, North Carolina. Thank you.
Cool.
Israel, we'll put that in the show notes for the APG community to check out. Declan says, I'm a young high school junior. Well, I'm a young guy, aspiring pilot. He's a high school junior, considering his options for after graduation. Aviation has always been one of my strongest passions in life, and I would love to pursue it as a career. But recently, I've been wondering about the future of the industry. My certainty over a career in aviation being one of unquestionable enjoyment and prosperity seems to always get blurred by media speculation relating to massive changes in aircraft operations. For example, single pilot, increased automation, remote piloting, etc. Obviously, many of these proposals are unfounded conjectures from people with no experience in the business. However, I wonder if others aren't. What I was wondering is what your opinion is on the future of the airline industry. Do you still see it as a strong career choice, even for someone as young as myself? How do you think it will change over the next few decades? Thanks so much for a great show and all you do to make it better. Always enjoy listening. Clear skies and tailwinds. Declan. Okay, Declan. We've talked about this so many times, and the quote-unquote journalists out there in the media are, looking for ratings, and they don't really understand a lot or most of what they're reporting, especially when it comes to aviation. And, we hear all these stories about next gen and drone airplanes and robot controlled airplanes and etc. And I think that you can rest assured that if this ever happens, and I seriously doubt that we're ever going to see airliners, without pilots on board, but even if that happens, it's going to be many, many decades into the future. So I think it's safe for you, even as young as you are, high school junior, you're probably 16, 17 years old. If you go into aviation full throttle, you're going to have a great career, and maybe by the very end of your career, you may see some of these things being implemented. But again, I doubt it. What do you think, Rick?
Yeah, I doubt it too. I mean, that's not going to happen anytime soon. As we've talked about so many times on this show, the reason why there's two of us up there is because it's not so we can talk about our feelings or anything like that, so that we could cross check what each other's doing, and it's just the safe way to go. And it's just imagine what it's going to take to certify a single pilot operation for an airline type flying. The safe bet is that things are going to remain the way they are for a long time to come. Systems are going to get streamlined, instrument systems, avionics, the stuff available to you from the air traffic control system, all that kind of stuff, that's going to evolve. But as far as pilots, as far as the operation going from a two-pilot operation to a single-pilot operation, and even more so to a no-pilot operation, that's going to be, it's a way time off. So, yeah, you're good. 17, you're good to go. We might even fly together at one point. So,
absolutely. You can fly with Captain Rick.
Wow. I'll let you have all the landings.
Yeah. Don't worry, Declan. Pilots are going to be necessary for many, many years to come. Magnus writes in. He says, luckily for me, there is a reverse button on my podcast app. For some reason, it is used just a little more frequently during the Rick events. Just kidding. I really appreciate all the technical information he provides. I use the reverse button just to be sure I didn't miss anything. Thanks for taking time to reply to my email. I really appreciate it. Glad you like the... Oh, so we had some... I was talking about my trip out to California with Magnus. He was going to be making a trip here to the States, and he was wondering if I was going to be in Phoenix or Colorado or one of these places for a meetup, and unfortunately, no. And we exchanged information. I rented a Volvo XC60 T5, and I was talking to him about the fact that it was kind of irritating because it had this I think I talked about it on the show, but I'm not sure. About
yeah, you did.
Where you like the engine shuts down and then it starts back up again, and he said that we made a special button just for you, Captain. It's a capital A with an arrow bent around it. I remember seeing that too. I didn't know what it was. Just in front of the shift lever. Hit that one, make sure the LED goes out, and the stop-start function is disabled. In other words, the engine will keep running also at standstill. And I wish I'd known that, because I would have hit that button because it was bothering me.
But you know what would have happened if you'd done that?
What?
You would not have been going green.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I need to go green. I should think about that. I should try to get back over here to my sound. Here we go. Yeah. Thank you.
We're going green. We're going green. We're gonna take care of the earth. We're going green.
We're going green. Miami Rick and I are going green. Okay.
We're going green.
Yes, we are. Gangrene. All right. So he said also, I had a little concern about, if the starter is like doing all that work all the time, I was wondering how long, what's the mean time between service, whatever the term is, for a starter. It must get worn out really, really fast. And he said the starter is much stronger and faster on vehicles equipped with stop-start. So no worries. Anyway, The 3 questions he has. In an earlier episode, you talked about spooling up the engines before takeoff, and that it's not common. But as far as I can observe, the engines spool up every time before takeoff to about 30 to 40% for a few seconds before takeoff thrust is set and established. Is this correct, or is this just a normal behavior during any engine run-up before reaching takeoff thrust? What would be the reason behind that? I don't recall exactly what I was talking about not spooling up the engines before takeoff, but there are times when we will actually, get the engine spooled up pretty high and do what we call a standing or a static takeoff for, like engine, when we have de-icing situations or contaminated runways or low visibility takeoffs, etc. But I think what you're talking about, Magnus, is that at least in my airplane, and I think most airplanes are like this, when you have an auto throttle system, you put the throttles up to a certain point. And in my airplane, it's like, basically the throttle's vertical up and down, and the engines will spool up to a low exhaust pressure ratio setting or N1 setting. And that's just kind of to get them accelerated to make sure that they're going to accelerate evenly. And then at that point, and is usually a minimum figure, like 1.2 EPR or 1.4 EPR, and then you request the auto throttles be engaged, and then the auto throttle system will advance both engines simultaneously. And I think it's mainly just to make sure you don't have that asymmetric acceleration on the engines. And so that's what I think you're hearing as a passenger when the engines kind of go up to a certain level, and then all of a sudden they really start going for the takeoff thrust. Is that what you?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. That's exactly what I was thinking about, and it's what I thought about when I heard his question the first time around. And yeah, it's exactly right. You want to bring them all, together, spool them up together. It's the same in my plane. You bring the throttles up to vertical, which in my plane is about 65% N1. And then at that point, you hit a button on the throttles, and in my airplanes on the throttle quadrant itself, and the little throttle levers called the TOGA switch, which T-O-G-A. T-O is takeoff, G-A is go around. So basically, when you're taking off, you hit that button, that engages the auto throttle, and then it sets the throttles at the preset N1 value for that takeoff. And it's just like you said, so that the engines spool up together and advance the takeoff thrust together to avoid asymmetric thrust going down the runway.
Right. Yeah. You ever notice, Rick? Sometimes when you're in position for takeoff, and you see these tire tracks, kind of like when you're on the road, and you see these. What do you call those? Like, I guess tire tracks.
Well, like skid marks.
Yeah, skid marks. Sometimes I look at this.
I'm 2 for 2 today.
Yes, you are. Skid marks. That's my porn name. I don't know what that means. Sometimes you'll see these black stripes, clearly where wheels are locked up or something on the runway, and they're usually not going straight. They're kind of like veering off toward the edge of the runway, and I always think, what happened there? That must have been an asymmetric spool up of engines or something. You know what else that could be?
And actually, there's something called a rolling takeoff, where you are cleared for takeoff before you get to the active runway. So you're taxiing down the taxiway, and right before you get to the runway, you'll be cleared for takeoff, so that you don't. So basically, you don't have to get on the runway, stop there, wait for your takeoff clearance, and then go. So you're basically clear for takeoff beforehand. So then a lot of times we'll do what's called a rolling takeoff. So we'll roll the plane onto the runway and then keep the turn going. And I guess some guys get throttle happy a little, too prematurely. That's what she said. And they'll spool the engines up a little too much. They'll spool the engines up a little bit too much. Then the airplane will actually start drifting. It can happen. And there's some videos of that on YouTube, I believe. And that's what I think causes some of those skid marks.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
I think you're right. But it always elicits some conversation. Like, what happened there? Glad I didn't make those marks. Okay, during takeoff and landing, this is Magnus again, I imagine that the nose wheel must be controlled to keep the airplane centered on the runway. You are correct. But as the nose wheel is controlled, if I understand correctly, by a special device or steering wheel, This must be quite a challenge, especially in crosswind conditions, keeping the rudder and nose wheel to cooperate. So I guess that it has two different modes of operation, one taxi mode and one runway mode. Is this correct? If the nose wheel in some way is the nose wheel in some way connected to the rudder pedal displacement, maybe with a lower or speed-dependent turning ratio? Well, that is a good question as well. And once you're lined up on the runway, you don't use the steering device. We call it a tiller, or sometimes, I don't know what you call it in your airplane, Rick.
No, it's the tiller.
The tiller. And that's the device that we use when we're, maneuvering the airplane on the ground and you're making, big turns, like anything more than maybe 6 to 10 degrees of, deflection or change from your heading of your aircraft. And that will turn the airplane on these, 45-degree turns or 90-degree turns or whatever. And the rudder pedal system is connected both to the steering, the nose wheel steering system, and the rudder, the actual rudder surface on the tail of the airplane. But you only use rudder pedal steering for very, very slight turns, either while you're taxiing or when you're going down the runway. So in my airplane, at least, when you go onto the runway and you go into position, of course, you're using the steering tiller because you're usually making a 90-degree turn from the taxiway short of the runway to lining up with the runway center line. And then basically once you've reached that, you're pointing down the runway, you don't use that steering tiller anymore. So when you're rolling down the runway, your hand is on the either the side stick controller or the control yoke, and your other hand is on the throttles, and you are steering the airplane with the rudder pedals. And you don't need 90 degrees of turning capability when you're running down the runway. You just need a little bit to keep the thing going down, centered down the runway. So, and they're actually, the rudder pedal steering and the rudder itself, they're all interconnected in that whole system. And once you reach a certain speed, the rudder on the tail actually starts having priority over the steering mechanism and the nose wheel. I guess it's possible, thinking about your question there, if you're using the steering tiller to actually use the opposite input with the rudders and kind of do some cross controlling or whatever, but that usually doesn't come into play.
Yeah. As you said, on my airplane, when you get to about 80 knots, the rudder really starts being more effective, and that's why on the flight crew training manual for my airplane, basically it's written on there that on the takeoff roll you should have a slight nose down elevator to increase that grip from the nose gear, and then release that pressure at 80 knots, because once you get to 80 knots, the rudder starts being your main directional control. Your rudder pedals is going to control about a 7-degree range of motion of the nose gear, and then the tiller, at least on my airplane, is 67 degrees of travel from one side to the other. So, and you use the tiller on turns when your ground speed is 30 knots or less. Mm-hmm. Never higher than that, because it could be very easy to over control, and you have to remember you have 800,000 pounds of airplane behind you in my case, and that's a lot of momentum to try to turn on a hairpin, and you don't want to do that too fast.
Right. And then so the opposite is true when you come in for landing. Initially the rudder is the priority, and then when the nose wheel is on the runway and you get to be a little bit slower, then again you're still using the rudder pedals to maintain runway center line, but at a certain point the rudder is less effective and your nose wheel steering becomes more effective. And then if you're in an airplane like the one that I fly, where the steering tiller is only on the captain's side, at some point you need to make the transition from, if you're a first officer and you don't have a steering tiller, you have to make a transition of control to the captain, because once you are at the lower speed and you're turning off the runway, especially if it's a 90-degree turn, you have to let the captain do the steering. Now, I know that there are airplanes out there like the Airbus, and I think the 777 has steering on both sides, doesn't it?
Yeah, our 777s have steering tillers on both sides, and our 67s have steering tillers on both sides. So, yeah, the guys on the right get to taxi. It's fun. It's good stuff. And I think it's good because the guys on the right are going to be on the left at some point.
Yeah.
And it's good for them to have the experience.
It is. It really is. But on my airplane, it's only on my side, on the captain's side. So, usually this is something that's briefed, and you ask. I usually ask my first officer, where do you want me to come on? How do you want me to take control? And we brief that. And sometimes I'll let the first officer, if it's a high-speed turnoff, a high-speed taxiway turnoff off the runway for landing, I'll just they'll use the authority, the limited authority they have with the rudder pedal, nose wheel steering, to steer the airplane off the runway. But at a certain point, they can't really taxi the airplane beyond that because they just don't have that turning authority or capability from their side of the airplane.
And did you know that all these high-speed taxiways branch out from the runway at 30 degrees? They're all at 30 degrees.
No.
Yeah, they're all at 30 degrees. So that makes it a high-speed taxiway. Like a high-speed exit has got to be at 30 degrees. It can't be more than that because otherwise it's not a high-speed taxiway.
I have a question. And it's something that somebody asked me probably 10, 15, 20 years ago, and I never, ever found out what the answer is. And maybe if anybody knows, Miami Rick will be able to supply me with this answer. Okay, so you're going down the runway, the center line, you have the painted center line stripes. And then you have if the runway has center line lights, they're either on one side or the other of the painted centerline markings. And somebody said, maybe they were just blowing air up my skirt. And by the way, I don't wear skirts.
That's a nice skirt you're wearing.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you noticed. So he said, do you know why? It's on one side or the other, or what determines whether or not the lights are on the left side or the right side of the center line markings? And I said, no. And I never did figure out what the answer was. Does it make a difference, or is there an answer?
Well, I know that that instrument runways, that's runways that are equipped with instrument landing systems, are required to have centerline. Well, not required, but a Category 2 or Category 3 runway is required to have centerline lighting.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this for a fact. During the takeoff portion of the flight, during low visibility procedures, the lights aid the actual light. I guess, what would you call it? Housing, that helps you stay on center line, not only by looking at it but by actually feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as you feel them, you're on center line. Now, as far as that being on the left hand side or the right hand side of the line, I don't know. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, well, somebody out there listening goes, oh, I know why. Like headings 091 through 269, it's on this side, and from 270 degrees through 090 or whatever, it's on this side. Let us know, because that's the kind of trivial information that I just geek out
But
on.
I've always seen him on the I guess on the right hand side of the line.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I've seen them both. I've seen them on both sides, so there must be some obscure, reason why they're on one side or the other. Maybe. I don't know.
I'm going to pay attention tomorrow when we take off. I'm going to take a picture and see where the lights are here in Amsterdam.
Okay.
And then in Frankfurt, I'll try to figure that out. I'm gonna look for the answer. I don't know.
Rick is going to report back with that information. Maybe it's just it doesn't matter. I don't know. Maybe that somebody was just saying that just to make my brain start smoking. All right.
And it worked.
Yeah, it did. On a flight a couple of years, this is Magnus again in Sweden. On a flight a couple of years ago, I was sitting on a window seat just above the wing from where I could see. Wow. So was it outside of the fuselage, right above the wing? No, I don't think that's what he means. I could see the upper side of the wing with all the panels, flaps, ailerons, and all. From my seat, I could clearly see that there was a small leakage. Some kind of liquid, I guess hydraulic fluid, was coming out from underneath the inboard spoiler panel. The leakage was not severe, and I'm aware of all the redundance there is, so this did not worry me. But I did not tell the flight crew. You know us Swedes, we're too shy and don't want to make a scene. I could have informed them after landing to keep the conversation away from people afraid of flying, for example. Is this something that would be appreciated by the flight crew? I guess that this would not be any news to them, as the instruments would indicate a pressure drop in one of the hydraulic systems anyway. But maybe this information would help the mechanic trying to locate the leakage. Okay, that's all for me this time. As mentioned earlier, I really appreciate all the work you do to put into the podcast. And so again, that's Magnus in Sweden. So yeah, if you have some kind of a small leak from a hydraulic component, chances are that's not something we're going to be able to see or pick up with our instrumentation in the cockpit. And I would say that don't automatically assume that what you're viewing or what you're seeing is something that we know about, because we can go back and look in the history of several accidents to find that people didn't say something when they assumed that the pilots knew what was going on, and the outcome wasn't good. So I'd say that it would be appreciated by the flight crew to mention something like that. But
absolutely,
the other thing is that it's not unusual to see something like a very small fuel leak or a hydraulic leak. But again, I would rather have you say something, and I would acknowledge what you're telling me and tell you that we are going to have it looked at. And if it's something that we think, oh, it's no big deal, that happens all the time, then we'll just leave it there. If it's something that maybe does require a mechanic to take a more close look at, then we'll do the right thing.
Absolutely. Well, you have to remember that that hydraulic fluid is pressurized to 3,000 psi. That's a huge amount of pressure, and there's bound to be little leaks here and there. But certainly whatever you guys see back there doesn't look right to you. We're happy to hear and get your help on it, because yes, we have instruments up in the flight deck that let us know the status of the systems. But we don't have eyes back there, which is why if you guys see something that doesn't look right, we definitely appreciate you letting us know.
Absolutely. And speaking of hydraulic leaks or high pressure hydraulic leaks, I was just quickly trying to look through this list of feedback, and I don't see it right offhand. But that Arsenal of Democracy flyover in Washington, I think it was on the 9th of May earlier this month.
VE Day, that was on May 8th.
Yeah, VE Day. There were several flyovers from many different types of airplanes, and I think this was the TBM Avengers that were doing a flyby, and there's a great YouTube video from a cockpit video of an incident that one of the wingmen in this formation experienced, and they thought it was initially an engine fire, and because there was like this vaporization of hydraulic fluid, and it kind of looked like smoke, and they thought maybe there was some kind of a fire, and so they were going down. It was almost like they were flying the river visual approach to runway 19 in Washington D.C. DCA, and they were just starting to turn to the left to line up with the mall, in Washington, the Washington Monument, and the whole bit. And all of a sudden this occurred, and then the pilot immediately rolled out of this formation turn and then turned to the right and lined himself up with runway 19, declaring an emergency. And all the audio and video is there to see exactly how well he handled the situation. And it's something that I'll include in the show notes, this link to this video, but it really illustrates, and by the way, during the video he has some places where there's some narrative, some writing, some text, and what you have to do is you have to be ready with your pause button to pause it so you can read it, because there's they don't really allow enough time for you to read it that quickly, so you have to pause the video to read what was happening, what the pilot was thinking at the time, etc. But it's just an example of a very quick-thinking, well-prepared pilot and what he was going to do if something went wrong at various points during this flyby. And he executed it flawlessly.
Yeah,
and,
it did. It was beautifully flown. It's a great video. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, exactly the way an emergency procedure, an emergency event, and how you handle that emergency procedure without, freaking out, and it was a good conclusion. And it turns out that even though they thought it was an engine fire initially, they realized that it was the 1500. In this case, it was a 1500 psi system, that there was like a pinhole leak in one of the fittings, the hydraulic fittings, and it vaporized because of the high pressure, and it looked like smoke, and they thought that that was what they had. But
you know what was my favorite part of that video?
What?
The fact that the pilot did something that all of us who are pilots, do when we have something happen that's a little bit outside the box. He did a little self-evaluation and self-critique on what he did and how he would handle a similar situation the next time around. And I thought that was awesome. The fact that he was able to say, you know what, I could have done this better, I could have done that better. And in the end, that's kind of what we all want to do. Always be critical of ourselves, because there's no better critic than oneself.
That's right.
Particularly with flying.
Yep, you're right. Pilots are really, there's nobody harder on ourselves than ourselves.
Yeah, and we hate to admit it but that's true. I mean, that's really how it is.
Yeah, like today even, we were taking off out of LaGuardia. It was my first officer's, the first leg that we've ever flown together, and he was the pilot flying. I mean, we flew, and I was the pilot flying, leaving Atlanta to LaGuardia, and then he was out of LaGuardia to Fort Lauderdale today. And we have this, special LaGuardia departure procedure, Whitestone climb, and he was like not doing it exactly. I kind of helped a little bit about, okay, you need to be turning here and doing this and doing that, and he was very embarrassed. He said, I don't know why, I've never flown it like that before. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't, so he was, and I said, oh, don't worry about it. We did it just fine. Nobody got upset with us for the way you flew the departure, but I could tell, and I knew, I know that feeling when you do something.
Oh, absolutely.
And we have pride, and even though we weren't violated, it was like, man, what was I thinking? That was really, I don't know why I flew the departure like that, but anyway, so, even when I was in the Air Force, I remember flying check rides with guys that were my friends, and I knew that, chances are, unless I really did something really bad, that I was going to pass the check ride. But it was more than just passing the check ride. It was like, I want to show this guy that I'm like one of the best pilots in the world. So, you have a lot of pride.
Exactly. You're full of pride, and that's and really that's why and that's why we do what we do, because we love it so much. And when you do something that you love, you want to be the best at it.
That's right.
When you screw up a little bit, that hurts your pride.
It does. So. And this is a craft, and most of us, I'm not saying all of us, but most of us treat it as a finely honed skill and craft that we try to continually improve upon. And it's just as we continue to fly in our careers, we just try to get better and better and better. So Mark writes, an Air India pilot was found drunk before a flight at Sharjah Airport. The commander of a Delhi-bound Air India flight from Sharjah via Kochi was found to be allegedly drunk by airport security just prior to flying, forcing the carrier to replace the senior crew member at the last minute. The commander...
Whoops.
Yeah, he said airport security... Oh, wait a minute, it's the same sentence. Air India said it is conducting an inquiry into the incident, which took place on Saturday. When was that? It was a couple weeks ago. Based on the findings, action would be taken against the pilot. So according to the Air India spokesperson, with reference to the Sharjah flight, the inquiry is being conducted and necessary action would be taken. The spokesperson, however, did not comment when asked whether the airline had de-rostered the pilot pending the inquiry. Sources said that the pilot was found drunk when he was going through... Okay, why do they write articles like this and they say the same thing like in a different way on 3 separate paragraphs?
So you read it, and whoever redacted this can go, gotcha.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, they got me this time. I think that I think this is the incident where, and it may have been a different article, where they said that actually this pilot had been had been caught allegedly drunk like 2 or 3 times before. I'm thinking, hello, that wouldn't happen in this country, at least. No. One time and that's it. It's like, I don't think you're going to fly again.
Yeah, and the one time you don't get to make it to the airplane because you're going to get found out before you get to the airplane.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, if Mike, like tomorrow morning, if we show up and I sense that my first officer is drunk or impaired in some way, and if I don't say anything about it, I'm going like, well, he's a good guy and I'm going to carry him through the day and we'll make it okay. We'll be fine. I'll just have him sit in the seat and not touch anything. Well, I am just as guilty or more so than my fellow crew member. So, if I sense at all that somebody's impaired, I'm going to go, you know what? Maybe you should call in sick at this point and, go back to your room or something. You don't let things escalate and let this person get to the airport and then get caught by security and everything else.
Absolutely.
It's just something you don't play around with. And if you have a policy like your airline, Rick, 24-hour policy, and somebody is drunk when they show up for a report, then this person has a big, big problem.
Absolutely. Incidentally, the Amsterdam portion of this podcast is being sponsored by Zephyr Hills.
Zephyr
Pure quality
Hills.
Since 1964.
That's good water there. Yep. Zephyr Hills, that's not in Amsterdam. That's in the U.S. of A., isn't it?
This was taken out of the airplane by me.
Ah, okay.
You know how much a bottle of water is over here?
No.
Lord. Yeah, it's like a little bottle of water of the mini bar. It's like €6 for a bottle of water. I'm like, kidding
wow,
me?
That's some good water there. I bet it's not Zephyr Hills though.
No, it's got some French name, and it's bubbly.
Bubbly, maybe Perrier.
Something like that.
Let's see. Frick sent a link to a YouTube video. Madeira is one of the I think Portugal islands. And,
that's in the Azores, next to Porto Santo.
Okay, yeah, which is a property.
That's
Portugal.
Yeah, it's Portugal.
Yeah. And they have notoriously strong winds at that airport and very challenging landings. And so if you're interested in seeing some airplanes flailing around and some making the right decision to cut short the approach and execute go-around procedures, check it out. It's on YouTube. Thank you, Frick. Let's see. Darren in the UK sent this. He said, I found an article in one of our national newspapers. I don't know if you've heard about this. Oh, he's talking about the hacker. I talked about the hacker, the airline hacker guy on the last episode. I really hope we don't hear much more from this guy. I think that most people understand what's going on here, that he's just making a lot of stuff up, claims that he controlled an airplane from the in-flight entertainment system and scaring people.
It's the airline hacker guy and the view from his cabin seat.
Yeah. Let's see. I mentioned in a few podcasts ago, Tim Van Ram out in the San Francisco Bay Area. He did an intro for another podcast, Outside Lands, Western Neighbors Project podcast. And apparently the podcasters from this show got wind that we were talking about their podcast and Tim Van Ram and his intro. And at a certain point in their show, they were talking about the fact that I have a show that's 2.5 to 3 hours long, and they were impressed with my stamina.
That's what she said.
And
you beat me to it.
They said it seems that they were impressed with your stamina, as they usually do 20 to 30 minutes a week, and we do here at the APG. 20 to 30 minutes. Come on, we're not even out of the intro.
That doesn't take us to the Java Jive.
No. Yeah, we're sorry about that. Well, anyway, thank you, Tim, for including that link. Here is the thing I was talking about, the Daniel Sinico. No, this is something else. I'm sorry. This was a YouTube video link to an emergency landing without the undercarriage, and it was on the 23rd of October 2014. This is from the YouTube description. You need to watch this. It's really good. My dad and myself were going to visit my sister in Madrid. We took his Piper Malibu to get there from Geneva in Switzerland. We had a wonderful flight with clear sky and back wind. I guess this person means tailwind, which pushes us to 272 knots. When we arrived near the Cuatro Vientos airport, my dad tried to put the gear down, but it was blocked. We had 3 hours of fuel left, so we tried for 1 hour to see what was the problem, but unfortunately we couldn't identify it. So he followed the gear emergency procedure 5 times, but the gear wasn't coming down. He then asked the control tower for an emergency landing, and they told us to land on the grass. So I think they had like a grass strip off to the side of the hard surface runway at this airport. And it's a really interesting video. You can see the cockpit view of this airplane coming in for landing, and they besides the slightly worn undercarriage and or belly of the aircraft and the bent up propeller, looks like it was a nice successful gear up landing. So check it out. That'll be in the show notes.
Nice.
And he also sent another one here. Let me scroll down, see where I can find, if I can find it. Cockpit foot. Oh, he was also the one that sent me the cockpit footage of the TBM Avenger emergency landing at DCA. So we'll have both of those in the show notes. Thank you, Daniel, from Italy. This is from YouTube, a comment on my YouTube video page. From BombBud1. I don't know what that stands for. He says, on the Piper crash, my instructor always told me during the day if you have an engine failure, he was talking about the Piper aircraft that crashed in Atlanta. Yeah. If you have an engine failure, the interstate is one of the last places you want to try to get on the ground. Reason being, at 70 knots plus or minus VBG, the people driving really can't see you until you are just a few feet above the ground, and it's too late to avoid a collision. Only go for interstates at night if you have an engine failure. Okay, that's what his instructor told him. The A400M crash, is this an example of the impossible turn? I don't know. I think that's an example of software cutting fuel off to all 4 of your engines. So, I mean, they tried to make it back to the runway, but they weren't successful. Yeah. And doesn't the intro into the We're Going Green song...
We're going green. We're going green.
Remind you of when the bad guys were doing something malicious in the 70s TV show Chips? That's the California Highway Patrol. What was that guy's name? The guy that was
That's Poncherello, and the other guy was forget.
The guy with a great smile. It was anyway.
It's his real name is Eric Estrada.
Yeah, that's it. Estrada. Yeah. So at the very beginning, I guess he means this little.
We're going green.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, it does.
You just love playing that song, don't you?
No, I don't. I just everybody's thinking, "Gosh darn it!" Just when I finally had it out of my head, you had to bring it up again. Thank you, BombBud1. Oh, this is interesting. I don't know if they found this person or not. Tim Van Ram sent this to me on the 19th. He said a link to an article in the San Jose Mercury News about a flight instructor and plane missing from Palo Alto since May 8th. So at the time he sent this to me, it was like 11 days or longer. I don't know if they've found him or not, but I'll put that link in the show notes if you want to check that out. N. Fuentes, by the way, again, just a reminder, until we get it fixed, if you send feedback via using the form in the Airline Pilot Guy site, in your message body, put your name in there, because for some reason I'm not getting your name. It just says that I'm getting something from the Airline Pilot Guy. And I'm the Airline Pilot Guy, so how could I be getting something from the Airline Pilot Guy?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, are you sending feedback to yourself?
Yes. Well, maybe that's maybe that's the problem. I don't know. Like I get enough, I don't get enough feedback as it is. I got to send it to myself. But anyway, it does send your email address, so I think that's why I put N Fuentes. So I don't know who that is, but thank you, whoever you are, N Fuentes. He said, I found this on the Aviation Herald, and I thought you would be interested. A Frontier A319 near Las Vegas on May 18th. Laser beam injures pilot. So link to that.
God, I hate that. That happens a lot in Brazil, where we'll be approaching either Sao Paulo or no, not really in Rio because there's a lot of mountains around, but Sao Paulo or Campinas in the middle of the night, 2, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and I'm and actually include this in my briefings. You got to be careful because if you look outside and it's clear out, there's always some joker out there with a green laser, pointing it at the airplane. It's like, man, come on.
What is wrong with these people? I don't think they understand how dangerous that is.
Yeah.
Huh. So it happens a lot in Brazil,
huh?
Yeah. I'm just quickly scrolling down here because we're getting close to. We got to cap this at 2.5 hours today because that's the only amount of room I have left on my server for my media serving service. And so I told Rick we're going to have to cut this thing off at 2.5 hours or less. So that means we have about 10 minutes or less to go on the flight. And I just want to make sure I don't miss anything from, like important or time sensitive. And I think there was that I wanted to talk about, and I can't find it. It was about a House of Representatives bill, HR something or other, that somebody has introduced talking about cutting funding for veterans benefits for using that money or that benefit for getting flight training. And I'm thinking, how stupid is that? We have this major crisis possibly, trying to get qualified people to fly airplanes, this pilot shortage, etc. And Congress, in their, infinite wisdom, decides
say just that
they want to cut off this benefit. And I'm thinking, talking about shooting yourself in the foot. Oh, it's from Tim in Portland. He says, it's been a long time since I've written, but I'm still catching up. I just wanted to pass something along to you that I'm not sure you've heard about, and I hadn't until he told me. Ohio Congressman Brad Wenstrup has added some verbiage to a bill, H.R. 476, aimed at capping the amount that veterans can use for flight training. This cap would essentially end our ability to go to college for professional fixed-wing or helicopter upon completion of active duty service. While I'm about to finish school after using my GI Bill for my flight training, I know that there are many Americans out there about to get or depart active service, hoping to use this benefit, and if this bill passes, it will no longer be there. I've attached 2 links. The first is to an article regarding the bill, and the second is where you can write to your representative, hopefully with enough support that we can put a stop to this. I don't know if this is too late, if this is something that they've already voted upon in Congress or not, but the way the time that they take to go through these things, I doubt that they've already voted on it. And so do me a favor, look at these links, and if you feel strongly about this, write your representative and say, please do not change, add the verbiage to. And I guess there has been some examples cited where some people spent huge amounts of money, like $400,000-$500,000 to get training, but these are just like a few isolated examples, the exceptions, not the rule. And don't let a couple people that really, what's the word?
I guess drag the curve down, or
just use the system in a bad way to get more out of it than they should have. Don't let those people ruin the whole thing for everybody else. And so I think this is a timely thing. So take a look at these links and write to your representative if you feel strongly about it, so they would put a stop to it. So hopefully we still have time for that. Tim, thank you for sending that timely information.
Absolutely.
And let's see, we have just a few more minutes here. Armando sent some audio feedback. So And at the end of it, he says, he writes in his email, the Dr. Airline Pilot Guy in Miami podcast? Let me think about that. No. Yeah, we're not changing the name.
And I don't blame you.
The Dr. Airline Pilot Guy in Miami podcast. I don't know. All right, so here's from Armando.
Hey, Captain Jeff. This is Armando, your buddy from El Paso, Texas, and just wanted to, send you a quick feedback. It's actually more of a small joke than anything. In light of all your recent podcasts with co-hosts, I think I came up with a brand new name for the podcast, and if you're ready, here it goes. The Dr. Airline Pilot Guy in Miami podcast. Got it? All right. Thanks. Talk to you later. Bye.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize he was actually going to say that in his audio feedback. I thought it was going to be some other kind of joke.
Really, Jeffrey? You had to spoil the joke for all of us?
I know, I did. Talking about, what do they call that? When you spill the, what is it, jumping the shark or something? I don't know. No.
What?
I don't know.
I've never heard jumping the
Spoiler.
shark.
Spoiler alert. I spoiled the whole thing. Jumping the shark. That came from the what was the name of the show? Shoot, it was the Fonz, Happy Days, and it was like in season, I don't know what season it was, the last the year of the show, and Fonzie was out there water skiing, and then there was a shark and he jumped the shark. That's where that term comes from. But I think I'm using it improperly right now. Please don't send me a feedback and tell me how it's properly used.
You're going to get feedback from the
I
phone
know.
going, hey.
If you send me feedback on jumping the shark, I'm throwing it away. I'm going to send it to the trash. Just warning you. Not you, Rick. Well, you too. All right. Well, you know what? We have lots of great feedback still. And, of course, as usual, we're not going to be able to get to it. Darn it. Yeah. Because I have to stop. I'm looking at the time on the camera, and it says 2:26. So that means that we're getting close to the end of the show. No doubt you're listening to the music coming up in the background. We don't hear it because I don't put it in until after
What's
record
playing
the show.
in my head?
You hear it? Yeah.
I hear it. You hear it?
Okay. Yeah, like this. Yeah. But usually it's not that loud. Oh, that's really good, Jeff. Why did I do that? So now it's going to be okay. Now you're hearing the music coming up.
Exactly. I was going to say that. Yeah.
And as always, thanks for listening, subscribing to the show, sending your great feedback. By the way, just wanted to send a shout out to some of the people that subscribed to the podcast via iTunes and left feedback or comments on iTunes. It really helps out. And let's see, this is from Underground Atlanta on the 2nd of May. He said, great job, Jeff. I absolutely love the work Captain Jeff puts into this podcast every week. Keep up the good work and keeping us informed. And this one from I Know What I Wanted from the United States on the 14th of April. Excellent podcast. Great insight into airlines for pilots and regular people alike. And Jeff Felmuth. Hey, I know that guy. I've met him in person. Over 150 episodes and still keeping me interested. So he says that as a pilot for a different legacy carrier than Captain Jeff, I love his easy, simple explanations of some of the complicated things that we do. Pilot or passenger, it's a great show. So thanks to all of you, Dari, Flying Dave 642, DFW Aviation Enthusiast, etc., for putting your reviews on iTunes. That really makes a difference, and thank you very much for doing that. Even if you listen to the show in some other way, subscribe to it, because that really helps the numbers and puts it out there and makes it available for other people to discover. So I just wanted to mention that. And let's see, if you want to follow Rick on Twitter, he's Miami_Rick. Again, that's on the Twitterverse. And do you have a Facebook page, Rick?
I do. What is my Facebook?
I don't know.
Forget. But I'll put it up there on Twitter so you guys
Okay.
can follow me on Facebook too.
And thanks again, Rick, for joining me and taking time out of your layover in Amsterdam.
Hey, man, always great to be here. Thank you so much for making me a part of this. It's always a great time to do a little back and forth.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun. And don't forget, Rick and I, and maybe you, are going to be attending the Innovations in Flight at IAD at the Udvar-Hazy Center, the Smithsonian Museum. What is it called? Museum of Air and Flight, Air and Space Museum.
The Smithsonian, yep.
That's it.
The Smithsonian Institution, and I'm 3 for 3 today.
Woo! Yay! That's going to be on the 20th, so come and hang out with us and the airplane geeks and aviation geeks worldwide as we geek out on that Saturday. And I mentioned the meetups in Orlando and Miami. Look in the show notes for that. And yeah, that's about it. So check out the Coffee Fund and all the aviation geek community over at airlinepilotguy.com. And until next time, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care and God bless.
Thanks, everybody. Woohoo!
Good day.